Good morning. I want to welcome those of you in Wellsville and Olean, as well as our online viewers joining us this morning. My name is Pastor Stu, and I am the campus pastor here in Arcade. So it is nice to have you join us in warm Arcade today. This past few weeks, we've been going through our series called Don't Waste Your Life. And we've looked at, in that video, obviously there's a lot of ways that we waste our life. But Pastor Andy talked about, the first week, talked about, how short our life really is. And talked about how it's kind of like that fog in the morning that's here and then it's gone, like that. And our lives are like that. And so we have to take advantage of every moment that we have. And then the last couple weeks, Pastor John, and then teamed up with Eber last week, Pastor John did, and they talked about spiritual gifts and not wasting our gifts and the importance of using our gifts. And this morning, I want to talk to you about not wasting your influence. We all have an influence, and we have, as we said, a short time to use that influence. So that's what I want to look at today, is not wasting your influence. But first of all, I think it's important that you know your campus pastors and know all their deep, dark stories. So one thing you may not know about me is that I enjoy water skiing. I don't get to do it very often, but I do like to water ski. And so actually I think we have some footage of me water skiing. Would you show that, Jordan? There we go. Look at that, huh? What are you guys laughing about? Doesn't that look like me? All right. I don't know how that got on there. That's not me, actually. That is a good friend of ours, Wake Kless. That's him on the wakeboard. That's not me. I do actually have footage, though, of me water skiing. Jordan, let's try that one.
Wipe out.
Yeah, that was me. It was kind of short-lived, but in my defense, I haven't water skied in over 5 years. And we couldn't find the skis that I normally use because I found out nobody water skis anymore. Now we're on to wakeboarding. Everybody wakeboards. Nobody water skis. So whenever I go water skiing, my friend Mark has to dust the skis off, pull them out of the barn, try to find them, and we go water skiing. And it's been a few years since I've done it. And we couldn't find the skis that I normally use. But the good thing is we have since found the good skis, and I'm not giving up. I'm going back and going water skiing again. But, so yes, I do enjoy it, and hopefully I'll do better next time. But, as we were out on the boat with friends that night and thinking, just kind of enjoying the evening, it was a beautiful night. I guess it was one night before the full moon, but you could have fooled me. It looked like a full moon on the lake. It was beautiful. But I was sitting there in the boat, and I'm kind of looking behind and looking at the wake of the boat. And if you put that up, Jordan, and you see how the wake of the boat is? For those of you who aren't used to it, the wake is kind of that smooth water in the back. And then you get the waves on each side. And if you're good like wake is and know how to use it, obviously you can do tricks and everything else off it. But when I water ski, I kind of like that smooth water in the back. And how it, you take the choppiness of the stuff on the outside and it's gone. It's nice and smooth behind the boat. And I got thinking about that and thought, why is that? Why is it so smooth back there? Well, it's because the boat is gone ahead in that rough water and kind of taken off the rough edges and smooth things out to leave smooth water behind. And so as I sat there looking at that and thinking about it, and I thought, it's kind of like us. It's kind of like our influence is we're leaving a wake behind. We're leaving smooth water, we hope. And I guess those are the two questions that I want you to think about this morning. Two questions I want you to think about is, who do you have following along in your wake? Who do you have behind you in your influence? And what kind of wake are you leaving them? I didn't realize Mark has a wakeboard boat, so it's set up for this. And they can pump water into different parts of the boat to sink it into the water more or make it sit up and to change the wake and the type of wake that they leave behind. And I thought about that, and I thought, what kind of wake am I leaving behind? What kind of influence do I have on people? And then, of course, with that says, do I have an influence? A lot of people say, I don't have much of an influence. Who do I have that I can teach, that I can influence? And that brought to mind a TV commercial. I know I'm going to show my age today. Brought to mind a TV commercial that I can remember of Charles Barkley, a Nike commercial in 1993. He did this Nike commercial. And he says in the commercial, he says, I'm not paid to be a role model. I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. And man, what a firestorm that commercial started. And if you ever saw Charles Barkley play, you would agree he was able to wreak havoc on the basketball court. That was one of the things he could definitely do. But that was the big conversation was, as a professional athlete, are you a role model or aren't you a role model? And he said, I'm not a role model. I didn't sign up for that. And I like Karl Malone, another NBA Hall of Famer, his response in a Sports Illustrated interview, he says, Charles, I don't think it's your decision to make. We don't choose to be a role model, we are chosen. Our only choice is whether to be a good role model or a bad one. And I would say it's the same for you today. Same thing for you. You don't get to choose whether or not you have an influence. You only get to choose what kind of an influence do you have. And I know many of you are still thinking, I don't have that much influence. Who's going to listen to me? I don't have that much influence. So we have a little exercise today that I want you to do me a favor. Everybody in the seat back in front of you, you'll see there's a full sheet of paper. If you'd pull that out, there's a little handout. It should look something like this. Has concentric circles on it. And there's a pen. Should be a pen in that seat back. Looks like this. It says Crosstown Alliance on it. Do me a favor, pull that pen out. I want you to use it. If you take this pen home with you, that's fine. That's okay. We're not going to come chasing after you. Matter of fact, if you take it home, that's good. If you go out to dinner after church today or another day, and you sign the check with this pen and then leave it there on the table, that's even better yet. We buy these pens to get out the name of Crosstown. So, help us to do that with that advertising. But take that pen out, and it should look like this. I want you to fill this in. I'm going to give you time during service to fill this in. I know if you're like me, I always was very good about taking notes in school. And so I encourage you to take notes this morning. But I want you to fill this in. If you look at, you'll see it's a series of concentric circles. Has self in the middle. That's you. Okay? The next circle out, it says immediate family. And if you notice, up here on top, there's a circle that says immediate family with 4 lines after it. You guys are smart. You've got this figured out already, don't you? What I want you to do is write on those 4 lines your immediate family. Go ahead. I'm going to give you time right now. Write down the names of your immediate family. If they won't fit, that's okay. Squish them in there. 2 names on a line. That's all right. We'll let you do that. And then as we work around the circle, you're going to see working out from the center out. It starts with self, then goes the immediate family, and then after that, our relatives. And you'll notice that's the next circle down, going clockwise around. It says relatives. Now, some of you could probably list all your relatives on that line, on those lines. Some of you would not even come close. That's okay. It's okay to lump them together and put, siblings, cousins, whatever, however you want to put it. But just fill those in with some of your relatives, Even if you want to just pick 4 names of relatives and just put those in there. And then working out from the center and down at the bottom, you get to where it says close friends. List down 4 people you would consider close friends. if you struggle with this, if you have a hard time writing down 4 close friends, spend some time after church today visiting with people. Start to bolster that number for close friends so that you can fill that in. So you filled in those close friends. Next one is work associates and neighbors. So put down, those people that you work with. If you're a teacher, maybe put down the teacher in the next rooms over. Maybe put that person in the next cubicle over. You can put their name down. If you're a student, you don't get off on this one. If you're a student, put down some of the names of other kids that you go to school with. Maybe it's kids that you know, but you wouldn't necessarily consider them a close friend, but you know them. Put them down here. If you go to school with them, you can put them down as associates. Write down some of your neighbors' names. Hopefully you know all the names of your neighbors. And put down your neighbors' names down there. That would just about fill the lines right there if you just did that. And then working up to the last, as we work out from our circle to the last circle, it's acquaintances. List down 4 acquaintances that you have. And it can be anybody. It's okay to write, that person at the checkout counter that you see all the time. For Pastor Andy, I think he could write down any of the workers at Tim Hortons. If you did not know, Pastor Andy, I think, has a Tim Hortons addiction. He cannot drive past one. I think his vehicle automatically turns in. But my guess is, all joking aside, Pastor Andy, I'm sure, knows those people that work at Tim Hortons. And he has an influence on them. Those are his acquaintances. I make it my own personal challenge in life to try to brighten the day of people behind the checkout counter or at the drive-thru. Because I think they get kind of a bum rap sometimes. People don't always treat them the best. And my kids think I'm crazy because I have conversations through the speaker system with the drive-thru. And you can't understand a word they say anyways. But, think about some of those people might be the acquaintances, people in your life that you might not know their name, might not know their story, but you can have an influence on them. Now, granted, you're not going to have the same influence on everybody, but you have an influence. According to my math, if you look at those names there, you put down 20 different people, at least 20 different names that you have influence on. And some of you, like I said, if you group some of those categories together, maybe more than that, maybe a lot more than that. And as I said, you don't have the same influence on everybody. The amount of influence is different, but you do have an influence. You can make a difference in their life. So how are you doing? What kind of wake are you leaving them? What kind of influence are you leaving them? And if you're like me, when you think about influence and think about, the people you have influence over, and you can't help but kind of think back and think about some of the people that have influenced you. And hopefully, you'll think about that today. After we leave service today, you'll think about, maybe I need to send a quick text or a quick note to somebody and just let them know how much they've influenced me. But I had, 3 people came to my mind, specific people that have influenced me, and I just kind of want to share them with you, and more importantly, share what did they teach me? Because, that's the whole idea of influence, is to pass it on. And what they've influenced with me, I can pass on. First person I think of when I think about influence is my big sister, Renee. And many of you have met my sister. Not many people can say that their big sister was their Sunday school teacher, but mine was. My sister was 9 years older than me. Don't tell her I said that. If anybody sees her, I'll get in trouble. But she's a little older than me, and she was my Sunday school teacher. And I can still remember that day in her Sunday school class that I accepted Jesus as my Savior. and just a special thing, but she taught me so many things through Sunday school, but also just through life. One of the things that she taught me is how you live is important. We live in a culture where people will say one thing, but then do something completely different. And she taught me that, yes, you have to say the right things, but you also have to do the right things. And how you live is important. And as much as I give her credit, it wasn't her idea. This came from Romans chapter 12 and verse 1. You can put that up on the screen. If you're following along in your Bibles, it's page 947 in the Bibles and the chairs. It says, "And I appeal to you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship." Did you catch that? First of all, I like when he says, "I appeal to you therefore." I appeal to you therefore, to me, says, pay attention. I talked a little bit about school earlier. When I was in school, if the teacher said, "Now this might be on the test," guess what? My ears perked up. If I heard that, I was going to listen. To me, that's what those first few words are. Is they're saying, okay, this might be on the test. You might want to pay attention to this. Guess what? I'm listening. And it goes on and says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about the way you live being a sacrifice to God? A living sacrifice. In the Old Testament, they would kill animals and burn them as a dead sacrifice. But this is a living sacrifice. This is a continual living thing. Have you thought about maybe that you can worship? It says here, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Have you thought about the way you treat your coworker on Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock can be worship, not just Sunday morning at 11? Maybe the way you talk to that person Friday evening is worship, or can be worship. Are you worshiping God each and every day in all that you do? And that's something that my sister taught me. She taught me that in her Sunday school class. But probably even more important than that, she taught me that in her life. Just watching her live. The way she lives is important. And so she's taught me that. And I'm very thankful for that. Probably another person that I thought of when I thought about influence, and this is kind of funny because it's a person that I really haven't seen in quite a few years. I may see him in passing every now and again, but a man that really taught me a lot about leadership is a man named Skip Lord. He's the athletic director at Houghton College. We called him Coach Lord. And I had the pleasure to have Coach as a Sunday school teacher in high school and in college, and learned a lot from him there. But probably where I learned the most was I worked under him as a counselor at Camp JYC for ever, I think, for a few years. And Coach taught me so much about leadership. And what's it look like to be a leader? And how do you lead? He also gave me opportunities to lead. But I kind of could do it in the protection of his wake. He'd let me lead, but he was always still ahead, smoothing out the waters for me behind. And one of the things that he taught me about being a leader was that if you're going to really lead people, you first have to serve them. You don't lead from the front. You really lead from the back or in the middle, in the midst of things with people. And again, I can't give him all the credit because he wasn't smart enough to figure it out on his own. This comes from the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 35. It says, "And he sat down and called the 12. Now that he is Jesus. Jesus sat down and he called the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all." Now, hopefully you've heard that before. You've heard Jesus say that, but think about that for a minute. This is Jesus talking. If anybody could say, follow me because I got it figured out, it was Jesus. If anybody deserved to be served, it was Jesus. But yet he's the one saying, if you want to lead, you got to be a servant. And obviously he modeled that. The 12 disciples could learn that from him, from watching him just live life. And again, I learned that from Coach. I learned that learned that from his teaching, and he told me that. But I also watched him do it. And I watched people serve him. Watch him serve people. And then, of course, as he was serving people, I watched people want to follow him because he was a leader. And then the third person that I think of when I think about, an influence on my life is my former pastor, Pete Spear, and the elders at my old church, First Baptist Church in Franklinville. The elders especially, I think of those guys, they are great men that really helped me a lot. When I lost my father, I was just a 29-year-old kid. And I remember one day realizing I wasn't sure who I was going to go to with those questions that you ask your dad. And these men stepped up. And they became father figures in my life. Men that I could go to and ask questions. And they would encourage me. And they would direct me. But like a father, they would also hold my feet to the fire a little bit when I needed it. I'm not sure I always enjoyed that part. But looking back, I learned a lot from those guys. But specifically Pete. For those of you who don't know, Pastor Jeremy. Pete Spear is Pastor Jeremy's father-in-law. It's Aaron's father. And he just taught me so much about being a leader and encouraged me. He really helped make me the man that I am today was through what I learned from him. And he taught me so much about the Scriptures. But one of the biggest things he taught me about the Scriptures was knowledge shared is better than knowledge kept. Let me say that again. Knowledge shared is better than knowledge kept. You can study the Scriptures, and you should, and I hope you are. I hope you're digging into the Word every day and studying and learning. And that's great to learn that and to know that and to have it here. But if you keep it here, you're not helping anybody else. And you need to share that and get that out there. And he encouraged me and even pushed me to use that and to share that and to help lead. And that reminds me, when I think about his influence in my life, reminds me of my favorite verse. Many of you know my favorite verse is 2 Timothy 2:2. And I'll set this up for you a little bit. It's Paul is writing to Timothy. And, talk about a relationship with influence. Paul and Timothy. It's the stereotypical relationship I think we all should have. Timothy was this young man who was just learning. And Paul was Paul. How else do you explain Paul? He wrote a ton of the New Testament. His missionary journeys are recorded in the Bible. The lives that he changed for Christ are amazing. And so you have Paul and you have Timothy, who was kind of a nobody at the time. And Paul just poured into Timothy and taught Timothy and shared with Timothy. And this was one of his letters. This is the second letter that Paul wrote to Timothy. 2 Timothy 2:2 says, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who'll be able to teach others also." Did you catch that? Paul says, what you've heard from me, the things you've heard me teach, the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, the things you've heard from me, now entrust those to faithful men. And then those faithful men will be able to teach others also. It's influence. It's passing it down the line. I think Paul's saying here, use your influence on others in the same way that I've used my influence on you. Think back to some of those people that have influenced your life. In the same way that they have influenced your life, pass that on to those people that you have influence over. Some of those people that you've listed on that handout. Now, the influence in my life from all of these people, and that's just three. I could sit here all day, but it's too hot. and go over, people that have influenced my life. Those were just kind of the first three that I thought of. But those three people, very different people, all very different people, all very different styles. But they all taught me similar things. How's that possible? How could that be? It's because they all use the same measuring stick. They all use the Word of God. And who they are is because they knew the Word of God. They'd studied the Word of God. And then they put it into their lives. And those are all people that I can follow because of who they follow. These are just some of the lessons that I've learned from these people. And I've learned from them because they went ahead of me. They went ahead and smoothed out the rough waters. They went ahead and gave me kind of that safe, smooth water to work. And when I learned to water ski, I would stay right in the back of the boat in that safe, smooth water. But then there comes a time as you get a little bit more adventurous, and I'm going to try to get outside the wake and try to get out and maybe smooth my own water. And that's the neat thing, that when you have somebody behind the boat on water skis, you have a wake, but then when they get outside the wake, they kind of smooth out the water there and leave a small wake behind them. And it continues. My question to you is, who do you have this week? Who do you have following along in your wake? Who's following behind you? And what kind of wake are you leaving them? Are you leaving them that nice, smooth glass water? Or is it rippled and rough? Use your influence. There's a lot of people in the world that want to influence our kids and our families. But is that the influence we want to have? Use your influence to leave a smooth wake behind. I'd like to invite our worship teams to come forward in all three locations. If you would bow your heads and pray with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the people that you have put into our lives. The people that you've put in to help us, to influence us, to change us, to make us and mold us in the way that you would have us to be. Thank you for sending your Son as an example to show us how to live. And for those people that have gone ahead, that have used his example to put into their lives, to show us as well. Lord, help us to be an influence on the world this week. Help us to shine a light in a dark place where they need to know you and to meet you. Lord, help us to be conscious of the wake that we're leaving, so it's smooth waters. In Jesus' name, amen.